Well, hopefully I've got this figured out to where I'm going to be able to do this correctly. And today we're going to talk about 5 words that they've used to lead you exactly where they want you to be through your own free will. Before we get to those words, let us remember that we have heard for a lifetime that when all we believe is based on their lies, when we are so confused that we will not know right from wrong, that is when they will strike. So some of us do know that all we have been taught, indoctrinated, and educated to believe is based on pure lies and deception. We are at that point where we'll need to have a very open mind because the 5 words we're going to, excuse me, going to be exposed using Black's Law 4th edition revised just may cause you to begin questioning everything you thought you knew up to this point in your life. So here's 3 of them: allegiance, consent, and govern. Allegiance, obligation of fidelity and obedience to government in consideration for protection that government gives. The citizen or subject owes an absolute and permanent allegiance to his government or sovereign until he becomes a citizen or subject of another government or another sovereign. The alien owes a local and temporary allegiance during the period of his residency. The tie or ligament which binds the subject or citizen to the king or government in return for that protection which the king or government affords the subject or citizen. It consists in a true and faithful obedience of the subject due to his sovereign, and is a comparatively modern corruption of the legiance, legiante, which is derived from liege, legius. Meaning absolute or unqualified, it signified originally liege fealty, absolute and unqualified fealty. In Norman French, alleviation, relief, redress. Kellam acquired allegiance, that is, binding a natural citizen. In American law, the allegiance due from citizens of the United States to their native country, and also from naturalized citizens, and which not can be renounced without the permission of the government, to be declared by law. Next, let's look at consent. A concurrence of wills, voluntarily yielding the will to the proposition of another, acquiescence or compliance therewith. Agreement, the act or result of coming into harmony or accord. Consent is an act of reason, accompanied with deliberation and mind weighing as in a balance the good or evil on each side. It means voluntary agreement by a person in the possession and exercise of sufficient mentality to make an intelligent choice to do something proposed by another. It supposes a physical power to act, a moral power of acting, and a serious, determined, and free use of those powers. Consent is applied in every agreement. It is an act unclouded by fraud, duress, or sometimes even mistakes. There is a difference between consenting and submitting. Every consent involves a submission, but a mere submission does not necessarily involve consent. Consent is an active acquiescence as distinguished from assent, meaning a silent acquiescence. Consent means an active circumstance of concurrence. Assent is a passive act of concurrence before another does the act charged, but the 2 terms may be used interchangeably. Consent is sometimes synonymous merely with waiver. As used in the law of rape, consent means consent of the will, and submission under the influence of fear or terror cannot amount to real consent. There must be an exercise of intelligence based on knowledge of its significance and moral quality, and there must be a choice between resistance and assent. And if a woman resists to the point where further resistance would be useless, or until her resistance is overcome by force or violence, submission thereafter is not consent. Implied consent, that manifested by signs, actions, or facts, or by inaction or silence, which raise a presumption that the consent has been given. Next, govern, to direct and control the actions or conduct of, either by established laws or by arbitrary will to direct and control, rule or regulate by authority. to be a rule, precedent, law, or deciding principle. A couple more just to help us tie it all together. We'll start with pledge. In the law of bailment, a bailment of goods to a creditor as security for some debt or engagement. A bailment or delivery of goods by a debtor to his creditor to be kept till the debt be discharged. Please excuse me. Oh, there's much more on this one, but this should suffice for the overall meaning. One last one here, just to put some perspective on all this. Oath. Any form of attestation by which a person signifies that he is bound in conscience to perform an act faithfully and trustfully, an affirmation of truth of a statement which renders one willfully asserting untrue statements punishable for perjury, an outward pledge by the person taking it that his attestation or promise is made under an immediate sense of responsibility to God, a solemn appeal to the Supreme Being, an attestation of the truth of some statement, an external pledge or asseveration made in verification of statements made or to be made, coupled with an appeal to a sacred or venerated object in evidence of the serious and reverent state of mind of the party, or with an invocation to a Supreme Being to witness the words of the party, and to visit him with punishment if they be false. In its broadest sense, the term is used to include all forms of attestation by which a party signifies that which he is bound in conscience to perform the act faithfully and truly. In a more restricted sense, it excludes all forms of attestation or promise which are not accompanied by an imprecation. The term has been variously defined as a solemn invocation of the vengeance of the deity upon the witness if he do not declare the whole truth so far as he knows it, a religious asseveration by which a person renounces the mercy and imprecates the vengeance of heaven if you do not speak the truth, or as a religious act by which the party invokes God to not only witness the truth and sincerity of his promise, but also to avenge his imposture or violated faith, or, in other words, to punish his perjury if he shall be guilty of it. The essential ideal of an oath would seem to be, however, a recognition of God's authority by the party taking it, in an undertaking to accomplish the transaction to which it refers as required by his laws. Assertory oath, one relating to a past or present fact or state of facts, as distinguished from a promissory oath, which relates to future conduct, particularly any oath required by law other than in judicial proceedings and upon induction to office, such for example as an oath to be made at the custom house relative to goods imported. Promissory oaths, oaths that bind a party to observe a certain course of conduct or to fulfill certain duties in the future, or to demean himself thereafter in a stated manner with reference to specific objects or obligations, such for example as the oath taken by a high executive officer, a legislator, a judge, a person seeking naturalization, an attorney at law. A solemn appeal to God, or in a wider sense to some superior sanction or a sacred or revered person, in witness of the inviolability of a promise or undertaking. If you can comprehend it, you see that they are words used to control your free will and lead you where they want you to be, oath being the exception. If you found this to be beneficial in any way, then please check out my YouTube and Rumble channels. As always, remember to share across all your social platforms, and most importantly with family and friends in other countries. Many blessings, much love, and gratitude to all.